Good morning, everyone. Meredith and Oakham here. This morning we're gonna start putting together that Yanmar 4J HBE. Jason's coming to the shop to help me out, and hopefully we make a big dent today and tomorrow. So I'll let you guys continue the video. Most of the video is fast forwarded because it was 7 hours of work, and I don't think you guys want to sit here for 7 hours. But I will be explaining the process throughout the whole video so you can understand what we're doing and why. And hopefully you enjoy. Alright, here she is, our Yanmar 4J HBE, all stripped down, cleaned up and ready to go. I've got to peel off old gaskets, prep the block for paint. This is actually a clip from the day before, but one thing you're going to hear me stressing throughout this video is how clean everything needs to be. So this is what I'm doing. We're just getting all the old gasket material off. And I really like to work with a vacuum cleaner in one hand because I don't want all that crud finding its way into oil holes. And it just makes for easy cleanup, easy maintenance of our work surface, and goes pretty quickly. One thing you'll notice here is I tend to use my razor blade a lot, as the razor blade does a really good job at getting these paper gaskets off. I do have a Milwaukee die grinder with different discs that could probably take this off quicker. However, there's a higher risk of damaging it, and honestly with these paper gaskets, they kind of just mush into the metal when you use a die grinder like that, so it's actually easier with a flat razor and the vacuum. This is the part of engine rebuilding that is the boring part and not many people see on YouTube. It's the cleanup and prep. The actual building of the engine is pretty straightforward and relatively quick in relation to this. But if you take your time and do a good job, you will not have problems down the road. And so this is well worth putting the effort into to do a good job, make it look nice, make sure everything is clean. Make sure the inside of the block is clean and you'll be set. Alright, here we go. This is day 2 and I've already installed the camshaft. My camera died, so I'm sorry you guys didn't get to see that, but it was pretty easy. And if you take a close look at these gears, I'm going to zoom up right here and you're going to see these timing marks that somebody has highlighted with paint. You'll see B, C, and at the top where the crankshaft meets the idler gear, A. And this is how you line everything up. Jason here is just cleaning up our crankshaft. We're going to get ready to drop that in, and he's just going to make sure everything's clean, that we don't have any lint anywhere, that all of our oil passages are clean and dry, and that there's no obvious damage. Now what you may notice is yesterday I actually prepped and painted the block. It's all clean and wiped out. Every piece that I could see is vacuumed, and as we go through each step we will be cleaning again and again, so you're going to see a lot of cleaning in this video. Now each part has been prepped, measured, cleaned ahead of time. However, as we grab each part for each new step, we're going to clean it up briefly again with brake clean and compressed air, and just make sure there's no lint, dirt, anything else that's going to be on it, because once it's in the engine, we hope it's perfect. Now, for those of you who have built engines, you're going to know the struggle of linty rags and towels, and these blue towels are all right, but I found that if you take a gloved hand and actually wipe the surface afterwards, it pulls up any lint that the towel may leave behind, so it's really handy. First order of business, main bearings. Now the main bearings that are going in the essentially top of the engine's upside down right now, make sure you have the proper bearings for the top and bottom. So in this case we're using the bearings with the holes, the oil holes that we're putting in right now. And you can see that there's 2 oil holes in that bearing in my hands, and they're going to line up with the holes in the block. And that's super important that you don't mix those up. Otherwise, your crankshaft won't get any oil. So pay attention to what you're doing when you're doing this. Now, as we pop these in, you saw that I wiped off the main bearing surface that these pop into. So you want that to be bone dry. And then on top of these bearings, where the crankshaft actually rides, we're going to put assembly lube, and you'll see me put that down in a sec. It is super critical that there's no oily residue underneath that bearing, because that can result in a spun bearing. So make sure you take your brake clean, make sure it's perfectly clean under there, and pop the dry bearing in, and then right before you're about to lower your shaft in, then you can put your assembly lube. So here's the assembly lube. I love this stuff. I think it's just lithium based, and I get it from O'Reilly's. You're going to put a glob on top of each, spread it around, and you'll be good to go. You can also use engine oil, but only if you're going to be firing up the engine sooner than later. I like to have everything kind of ready to assemble all at once. So that's why we're going through the process of cleaning all the pieces in order to install the crankshaft. That way they're literally right there ready to go, and I can install the crankshaft, torque the main caps down, and move on to the next step. Check out these bearings. Not looking so hot. This is bearing number 4 towards the rear of the engine. And so it got the worst damage. And each bearing that I show you after this gets better and better. Some of it shows a little bit of pitting. Some of it shows normal wear and tear. And some of it shows damage from just dirt and debris. Now everything internal to the engine goes back together the way it came apart, as it will wear a certain way and it belongs a certain way. So all these bearing caps go they're installed in a certain orientation. Right now it's all mixed up, but we're going to have that all in order prior to installation. It's cylinder 3, 2, and 1. Yanmar actually does it backwards compared to most engines, so pay attention to that if you have a Yanmar. And make sure everything goes back the way it came apart if you're reusing parts. Let's get these main cap upper bearings installed, or lower bearings, since we're working upside down here. Once again, we're brake cleaning everything, making sure it's all perfectly clean before I install my new bearings. And then when I pull those new bearings out of their packages, I'm going to wipe off that kind of residue, that oily residue that keeps them from flash rusting, and make sure they're perfectly dry and clean prior to installation. Now, if you look closely at this bearing, see how it has no holes? That's because this main cap has no oil holes in it. So you, like I said earlier, you want to make sure you have each half of the bearing mounted correctly. That way oil can run through the crankshaft and through the block. Now what you're going to see here is I'm lubing every bolt with engine oil, and I'm lubing them with a very, very light coat. So I'm gonna wipe engine oil all over them. And the reason we do this is when you go to torque them, they go in smoothly with no resistance. But you don't want any excess oil, because if you have too much oil, it will run down the threads and it can actually hydrolock inside the bolt hole and crack the block. So make sure you don't have too much excess and you'll be good to go. All the torque wrenches you're going to see today are click type mechanical torque wrenches, and I'm going to get this one all set up and ready to go. We're setting it to 80 foot-pounds for the main bearing caps. All right, let's get this crankshaft installed. Remember, you got to time it with the front idler gear as you place it in. This is actually attempt number 427. We just didn't film the other attempts. It took forever to get this thing right. Had to redo bearings a few times, and we finally got it right in this shot. Now it's finally time to get our main caps installed. And the main caps on this engine, like a lot of engines, are kind of a custom fit to the block. The castings actually match very precisely. And so sometimes when you set them in place, they don't necessarily just drop down flush, but they will drop down flush as you torque them down. And so right now, as I'm working on this, it actually looks like there's an air gap between the bottom of this main cap and the block. But as I tighten them down, they'll very smoothly move into place. A neat fun fact about some engines is some bearing caps and connecting rods actually have fractured castings. So the piece is cast as one complete piece and then broken, so that way all the ridges and grooves line up in only one way and you can't misplace them. Now with each step of the process, each step of the install, you're going to see me manually turning this engine over. I am looking to see if it's rotating smoothly, if it's binding up anywhere as I complete each step. So right now the bolts are actually loose, they're not torqued down. And I'm explaining to Jason here that we're going to tighten them up from the center out instead of from one way to the end, so that way things don't warp. As I torque this down, you'll see me checking the rotation of the engine with each step completed. That way, if something binds up, it's easy to figure out what went wrong. Now, Yanmar doesn't give us multiple torque steps. It just says about 80 foot-pounds. And so what I normally do is I'll break that up into 1 or 2 different steps. So the first step, we're actually torquing it to 60 foot-pounds, and then the final torque will be 80 foot-pounds. let's check our rotation one final time. Ah, she spins nice. So nice. Jason, you gotta feel this. That's the way it should be. Next step is the oil piston cooling jets. They install right here. Here's the holes for them. And those just screw in real easy. Here they are. Cleany cleany. That's the name of the game. I'm prepping the counter bores here for our new cylinder liners. So it's really important that these bores are in good shape and nice and clean. Now these Yanmar liners come pre-machined and ready to go, and they just slide in with light oil on the outside. So all you're going to see me do here is clean off all that residue to keep them from rusting, and then put a light coat of oil and just shove them in the counter bores. That's all it takes. That's all the manual wants you to do. These bores I measured ahead of time, and they are within spec. Tried them out with the new piston rings, and they fit really nicely. Not every engine will come with liners that are pre-machined like this, so make sure you double check with an indicator prior to just installing them. Perkins, for example, you do actually have to send out these liners to be machined to match your piston and rings, so double check that before you install them. Look at that beautiful crosshatch. That's what crosshatch is supposed to look like. And if the engines run correctly, it should stay like that for a long time. This is a quick clip of me. I want to show you how to measure piston rings. This is actually an old piston ring. I did this the other day, but you're going to stick the ring in the cylinder, and to make sure it's even, I take a piston with the rings installed and just shove it down about an inch into the bore, and you'll see that ring gap kind of on the lower right side, and the manual will give you a spec for how wide that gap should be. So you're going to take your feeler gauge and just make sure you're within spec, and if you need to shave it down, or if it's too wide, then the ring's the wrong size, the bore's the wrong size, something's not right. So in this case, I've got a 5/1000 feeler gauge. It fits nice and snug. All the new rings spec'd out when I measured them the other day. That's all they're asking you to check prior to installing the rings on the piston. Now we're reusing the pistons on here. We've cleaned everything up. We're going to put new conrod bearings in, and new rings. Everything's been cleaned out. The ring grooves are nice and clean. Jason scrubbed those out earlier. And I'm currently putting the oil scraper ring in, and it's a two-piece ring with kind of a spring underneath, and then an outer ring, which is in my hand now, that's kind of a double layer ring. And you're going to need a ring spreader, a piston ring spreader. These rings will snap really easily if you're not careful. And right now we don't have any spare rings, so we really don't want to break any of these rings. Yes, you can do it by hand. It's a real hassle, and you run the risk of actually breaking a ring. So you can get this tool relatively cheaply at an auto parts store. This particular tool is a snap-on one. It's a little bit more expensive, but it works really well, and it makes installing these rings really quick and easy. This second ring is a mix between an oil scraper and a compression ring. It's actually the backup to the main compression or keystone ring, and it does have a marking on the top so you know which way goes up, and so I'm going to get that installed. And then the last ring on the very top is our main compression or keystone ring, and then we'll be done with piston rings. We're almost to the end of the day. We are ready to install pistons. So I'm going to need my piston ring compressor set here. This is a multi-size set. I love this set. The piston rings we're working with today are 3 inches, or the pistons are 3 inches. And so I just need the smallest ring, and that will make these easy to install. So as we prepare to install the pistons, we're going to double check that our bores are clean. We're going to do one bore at a time. That way we can make sure there's no lint or dirt. And then this compressor ring is going to go around my piston rings and hold them tight against the piston, so that way the piston can be pushed into the cylinder. Now the piston needs to be installed a certain way, so if you were the one tearing the engine apart, make sure you documented that, as the manual doesn't always tell you which way these pistons should be installed. So I had taken pictures. That's how we know which way these were installed originally. And Jason, on the back side of the engine, he's going to be catching my conrod. He's got a piece of wood that he can feed through the bore to make sure that connecting rod doesn't drag across our brand new cylinder, because we don't want to gouge it. It's all hardened steel and that would be bad. And once he gets a grip on that, then I'll be able to get the piston tapped into the hole. So once I got my angles right, I'm gonna grab my rubber mallet here in a sec and tap that piston into the cylinder towards Jason. Jason has that piece of purple heart in his hand, and making sure the conrod isn't dragging on the cylinder as it gets tapped in. I really wish I had a piston hammer for this. I actually ordered one and then Snap-on sold it to somebody else. So we're stuck using my old school rubber mallet, but hey, it works. Once I get this driven all the way down, it will engage with the crankshaft, and Jason can get the end cap mounted, the conrod cap mounted, and the bolts torqued. And then we'll be ready to move on to cylinder number 3. Now, as we push everything together, don't forget everything's lubed up with fresh engine oil, so it all slides in pretty easily, and it should slide in. Again, after we get this piston all attached, we're going to turn the engine over by hand, make sure everything rotates nicely, and then move on to the next cylinder. If I remember right, these conrod bolts get torqued down to about 35 foot-pounds. Not looking at the manual at the moment, but I think that's pretty close. This is my twin beam torque wrench. It's really, really great for small bolts like this. It is in inch-pounds, so if you're using a torque wrench like this, make sure you convert inch-pounds to foot-pounds. As I'm rotating the engine, the liner is actually sliding out, and you'll see me reach. I got to hold that liner in place. These liners aren't press fit or anything, which is kind of unique to this Yanmar engine. And so until we get the head mounted and everything, the liners are going to want to move on us, so we got to hold them in place. Well, we officially have the rotating assembly installed, and she's turning oh so smoothly. I will see you guys in the next video. We'll pick this up where we left off. Thank you, and see you next time.